Right. Let's go ahead. What's going on, Energy Fam? I'm here with Jon Ludwig, president and founder of Novi Labs. Jon, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are you and where are you joining us from today?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me on the show. Can't let Ted have all the glory, having been
I
on
know.
the only Novi person on your podcast. So, yeah, I'm in my home office today in Park City, Utah. So we
Oh,
live in a ski resort. Made the move in May of last year, and it's been awesome for both personally, professionally, and my family. Luckily, it's only a half hour from the airport, so it's easy for me to get anywhere I need to go pretty
wow.
quick.
Jon, that is super fascinating. I would have been willing to bet $1 million you were in Austin. But knowing what you just said, isn't that part of the country quite well known for sort of a tech hub, as well as Austin and obviously Silicon Valley?
Yeah, Salt Lake in particular, which is contiguous to Park City, it's only a half hour away. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. I'm glad the growth is happening down there and not where I live, because I've seen the pluses and minuses of growth, having lived in Austin for 20 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's definitely they're making a lot of investments out of Salt Lake, and definitely it's growing as a tech hub. And cost of living is reasonable. The weather is incredible.
Hmm.
It gets hot in the summer, at least down in Salt Lake. Where I live in Park City, if it hits 80, that's kind of like, whoa, 80. So
Yeah.
I'm used to Texas, which is a little 80 is like early spring
Dude,
time frame. So
I'm sure. And so your family loves it up there, I'm assuming?
yeah, I mean our the school day is like 5 hours for the kids, so they love that. They used to get home at like 5, and now they get home at 2:30. So pretty much, if you can deliver a shorter school day, the kids would be happy. You could move them to southern Crete, and they like 5 hour school day. Fine, I'll get used to all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But actually, I have a son and daughter. My son is a amateur mountain bike racer, so
Oh,
this is a great place to be if you want to do downhill and stuff like that. And then my daughter is a volleyball player. They've both gotten into teams here and stuff, and it's a very sports orientated town.
yeah.
A lot of pro events happen here and stuff. So it's a cool place to live.
Yeah, as someone, so I grew up in the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia, and so a lot of mountain biking, a lot of outdoor activity. So to your point, like I've lived in Texas now for the last since 2010, and so this is home. Our kids were born here, and just hearing that kind of reminds me of back home because that was a lot of the things that I did growing up, and so that's cool. It sounds like again, like you said, professionally, from a career perspective, and personally and family, it sounds like it was the right move. So how often do you then go to Austin? Because I would imagine being present and being with the crew down there is important to you. So like, do you travel a lot then, or?
Yeah, a fair amount, but I've managed to contain it to like 3 days a week. So I'll travel Tuesday to Thursday, and
Nice.
one of the nice things about Salt Lake is they have direct flights pretty much everywhere. So that really does save a lot of time and make it a little bit more manageable. But yeah, I'm back in Austin, twice a month, once a month, pretty often. And then of course, most of what I do is talk to customers. So I visit, Midland, Oklahoma City, Houston, Pittsburgh, all the places where our customers are. I
Yeah.
spend quite a bit of time visiting with them as well.
Very cool. So, but you're not, are you originally from Texas then? Or
No, I grew up in the Northeast.
no?
Went to school at University of Florida, so the Gators, not Seminoles, just so everyone
Okay.
we avoid any
Way
potential
to mention.
confusion. Uh, Although it's been nothing to write home about football wise recently, but
I get it, man.
next year, man, next year it's going to be great.
There's always next.
But
Yeah,
yeah, so I love the South. I've been in the South since I was 18, although I did spend about 7 years in Boulder slash Denver area, which is also great. Probably
yeah,
the closest thing to Park City I've ever experienced.
yeah.
But yeah, I spent about 20 years in Texas, which I loved. Now I'm back in the mountains, so I like that a lot as well.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. So I'm curious, man. Like, this is a big week for conferences. Are you just have you just delegated that in the right type of way to have everyone else down here? Because I mean, the frat conference and NAPE, and I know you
Yeah.
guys are involved with NAPE, but you just elected to stay home, huh?
Well, LinkedIn celebrity Ted Cross is
Yeah.
at NAPE this week, so I would be merely walking in his shadow. Uh, no, that's a joke. I mean, I usually go to NAPE. I have customers that are there, and they're like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "I didn't go this year," and of course I'm getting volumes of crap coming back from them, like, "Why aren't you here?" But the simple fact of the matter is I traveled like I don't know, 6 weeks in a row at the beginning of the year, and I needed a week off, to be honest. So we
Look,
have a great team at Date. Ted's there, Scott Ison's there, Emily is there. So we have a couple of folks there. We have a booth. So if anyone
yeah,
sees this podcast before Date ends, go by and see the team.
yeah.
And I will be there next year. It's just a 1 year off type thing for me.
I can identify. It's like I've been in oil field services, since I was 18. And so like the amount of conferences and things that I've attended over the years, I've become much more selective and even not going to every single one every year. So like this week I dedicated Wednesday, which was yesterday, to hit up, NAPE and the frat conference, got the happy hour in. And that's enough for me. I can get all that stuff accomplished all in one day. And so but I've managed to, or I've realized over the years, there's a good time and place to try and get to everything, but it's just not sustainable. And it's, I guess, especially someone like yourself that travels that much, I don't blame you. And then you've got great people, right? Like that's why you hire a good team, is to put people in the right positions to do that kind of stuff, because you can't do it all.
Yeah,
So good for you.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's a luxury to have great people, honestly. We have a company full of great people. So we're very fortunate to have made mostly good hiring decisions. So
Yeah.
we're super team
And
is great, and I have to let certain things go. It's part of being a founder, is to like know when you need to replace yourself. Like, okay, if I can take this, turn it into a template, and then teach somebody else how to do it, that's the only way the company is going to grow. And then you got to let people go out there, and they may make mistakes. You talk about it, you improve. It's the same thing I had to do, except I had nobody to talk to. That's the only difference. By the way,
I
have you ever seen a founder and a regular person? You have to sort of invent everything on your own and keep trying different things until you find something that works.
No kidding. Well, I'm fascinated to dive into a lot of that. Like, there's quite some interesting topics to unpack there. When you talk about people, you mentioned Ted Cross. I interviewed him, and for the folks listening, it was last March that I interviewed him, and it was after he started. I don't know how long ago before he started with Novi, but he started creating these like great, insightful uh posts on LinkedIn, and I found them extremely interesting on being on the oil field service side. The way he presented the data, taking very complex information, essentially articulating it in a way that someone without even a ton of industry knowledge could digest. And so when it comes to, like you said, people and stuff like that, that ultimately led, AES looking at Novi and becoming a customer. But um, essentially, really, I think you guys have a really interesting secret sauce. And so I'd be curious, like when look as a founder and like someone who's on a startup phase, like what's your litmus test to finding good people? Like what's sort of your strategy behind that?
I think we've developed a reputation at this point in the industry. Like, if you want to work in and around data analytics for energy and oil and gas, we've kind of taken a leadership position there. I think I can safely say that, although it makes me cringe a little bit, but I think we're there. So when we post job opportunities, we get a lot of very qualified people that are interested. It's very gratifying, because they're watching what Ted is talking about and how he's using our products to produce these things, and they're really interested in it. So as a result, when we do decide to go out and hire, we're very purposeful about it. We always go network first, recommendations first, but we also always post job recs as well, because we don't want to, you know, we don't want to limit our hiring just to the bros that we knows. You want to open the aperture, and because we've really found some great people that way that we didn't know that were out of network
Yeah.
for us. So we kind of do a combination of all those things, but in general, I think people have a positive opinion of us. A lot of people are following us, and we've just been really fortunate to have great choices. Like sometimes we look at three candidates, and we're like, gosh, any one of them is likely to be successful. It's difficult to choose which one, but we've managed to choose pretty well. I remember, when the first time I interviewed Ted, I think he started at Novi in 2019, but he was at Conoco, and Conoco's a big company, right? And some people need what the big company provides. The first time I met Ted, I'm like, he doesn't need that. He's actually looking for something, that's a little bit smaller, more of a dare to be great situation.
Yes.
I think people that end up being great sense that they have something inside them like that.
Hmm.
And I thought that the first time I met him, I'm like, man, this guy, if we could give him a platform, he could not only make a massive positive impact for Nobi, but also positively impact the entire industry if he had the right platform. So we've tried to give him the platform, and man, he's done a lot with it. And we have others, that we hope to do the same thing, give them these same opportunities to build followings and to become known in the industry. And
Yeah.
the same things Ted has done. We would give anyone who's got the motivation and the will to do it the platform to do so. And that's
That is something that I, especially as a, I hate to say a content creator, but as someone who produces content in hopes to impact and educate folks, I find it very attractive for you guys as a company, especially you as a leader and the president running the show, allowing your employees to use their personal platform to create content around Novi Labs. I know a lot of companies that would say like, oh yeah, your personal platform, like you can't talk about us. You have to either reshare our posts or everything has to be done by us and then you can share it. But I mean, can you speak on your experience sort of with your approach and how that's been beneficial and essentially just giving them the freedom to create value in that type of way without putting them in this box like you have to do it from this page and you can't do this and you can't do that. Like I'm sure there's boundaries, but speak a little bit about the experience because there's not a lot of companies that will allow that, and I think that's very unique and probably part of your secret sauce.
Yeah, I think people, if you just think about the way social media works, blogs work, etc., you follow people, not companies. That's just the bottom line, right? Like somebody has an interest in, like when I read certain, say just a newspaper article, right? Like or whatever. I don't follow the Washington Post or any other specific periodical. I follow people. So it would, to me, it doesn't make sense to force people to go through a branded company page, uh, because ultimately you're limiting your own audience if you do that. They're not going to be as interested. If it's Ted's opinion and you trust Ted because he usually writes things that make sense, then you're gonna be much more likely to share that content with your friends and your colleagues and your network and all of that. And it's absolutely turned out to be true. So we also have a very, very gifted head of marketing, Mohammed, who's like, no, you never see his face on LinkedIn, but he's the guy behind the scenes building the platform that amplifies
Yes.
these unique voices. And part of what we're trying to do, we have some other really unique voices in the company that we want to give the same platform, like I said before. So we're kind of taking what we've learned from all the stuff Ted has done, and we're gonna try to build some more Teds, and most importantly, provide content that is unique, interesting, has a point of view in the marketplace. Because I think a lot of the stuff I read that's produced by a corporation just sounds like a white paper,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and those things to me, I never trusted them when I worked in the industry at an operator, and I just immediately think less of that if you don't have the point of view of promoting the creator, not the company that they happen to work for.
Yeah, it's a little, to me it's a little more like commercially focused. Like if it's coming from a company page, like I know it's important to have a company page, but to your point, people connect with people and ultimately they trust the voice, right? And then if you can add a personal touch to it, then even better. And then if you have all the people your company or whoever's willing and to put themselves out there, just think of the exposure you get and the organic reach that you could be accumulating. It's like, to me, it's a no-brainer. And then, for you to obviously identify with that as well, I think is cool. And hopefully that resonates with a lot of folks. Because, again, oil and gas, especially traditional, oil field services, or even, the E&P side, there's such a high degree of sensitivity around that stuff, right? Because everyone wants to hold everything close to their chest, and so it's but I companies like yourself and some others are certainly making a shift towards what I think is just a better ecosystem for sharing information. So I applaud you guys for that. I am curious, you have an interesting path. It wasn't always oil and gas. I think you said I read you were at Hess there for a good amount of time before starting Novi Labs, but I'm curious from your perspective, uh, do you have any sort of core beliefs around energy that you've changed your mind on over the last few years? And it could be oil and gas or just the energy landscape in general.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me that certain industries, no matter what they do and how much benefit they provide to society, are always the villain. And I I feel like that's a weird position that oil and gas finds itself in, right? Like, I lived in Texas when we had that snowvid ice freeze, right? And I was in Austin, and we lost power at our house for like 8 days, right? And
Mm.
so if you start looking at the chain of events that led to that, it was ultimately a non-redundant set of systems that once the feedstock failed, which are essentially gas wells in the Permian, all the downstream knock-on effects happened, and it's not easy to turn a power plant back on. Like, it's not a simple process. So when you
Mm-hmm.
kind of look at the cause and effect, what we do is important. Helping customers be capital efficient, get the most energy out of the ground that they can to build all the products that everyone needs. I think that's very important work. And I've probably in the last 10 years, and especially my work at Novi, kind of doubled down on that position. So it's painful for me to read about policy decisions like, delaying approvals on LNG terminals, or delaying permits on pipelines to the point where the pipeline operator just gives up. Like, so what have you done there? Right? You've now made oil transportation in North Dakota happen exclusively by train. That's not good.
Right.
That's way more dangerous than a pipeline. Uh, or in the case of LNG, you stop an LNG facility from happening, you're going to diminish investment into that space. You might as well just write Putin a check,
Yeah.
uh, because now all the LNG related products we can ship over to Europe to reduce their reliance on Russian gas
Yeah.
are now, um, I mean, they're still reliant, right? So that puts them in a very bad position, funding opposition to that regime, because they have this dependency on them
Yes.
that could be replaced. So I don't know. It's painful to see stuff like that, but I think the industry has, if you look at the last 10 years, especially in the lower 48, the industry has taken the medicine, right? Like, every time I read about an acquisition, or I read about a company deploying how much capital they're going to deploy into new drilling, I'm seeing, flat to slightly up production, and maintaining enough rigs and fracs and trying to become more efficient and returning a lot of capital to shareholders. And I think eventually, people will say things like, I want you to be in energy transition related stuff, and I want you to be out of oil and gas. But actually, what they want more than all of that is a good return on their investment, if you're an investor, right?
Right.
And frankly, the industry is providing it, and it's undervalued
Yeah.
at the moment, and capital is a bit scarce. And it's not just for the operators. Capital is also scarce, for digital oil field companies like us. It's difficult. It's difficult to go out and raise capital because half the funds out there have some mandate where they can't fund tech companies that are servicing the industry. So
Yeah.
these things kind of flip, over time. But my perspective is shaped by this. We did the same thing. We had to move to a cash positive model. We had to kind of defer investments we would have liked to have made, we accelerate things. But on the plus side, we still managed to grow really well, especially last year. As a company, we picked up some great clients, and as a result, we're now attractive for capital,
Okay.
at good terms. So we're not like the latest security layer software that there are 50 of, and still they get hundreds of millions of funding.
Right.
But we service a very important sector, and I think everyone's probably realized that at this point, even if they might not say it at cocktail parties. But it is. I remain completely convinced that the work we're doing is extremely important. It solves a lot of problems. Yes, it creates some problems, but every solution also has side effects, unintended consequences, etc.
Yeah.
And I think overall the industry reacts to these things, and things move in a positive direction. I mean, as a result of all the ESG emphasis, companies are very much paying attention to their GHG emissions, and they're paying attention to carbon capture. I mean, look at the investments that Exxon is making. Look at the investments that Oxy is making, right?
Hmm.
These are significant dollar figures that they're putting out there, to improve upon the overall environmental record of the industry. So I think there's been some positive outcomes as a result of this sort of vilification of the industry, but I think capital goes in cycles. It'll probably return,
Yeah.
but whether it does or it doesn't, it's healthy.
Yeah.
It's still worth doing what we do, optimizing what we do, et cetera. And that's kind of what we're here for.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's two major points I wanted to touch on. The first one, talking about LNG and again, like to me, that whole sort of scenario just speaks volumes to the lack of understanding or the consideration to the other side of the equation. It's like you can try and impact supply, but demand is roaring. Like why are you so focused on that when at the end of the day the demand's there and the market, someone around the world is going to provide that hydrocarbon or that gas or whatever to whatever buyer it is. So why put us like why handicap us when we probably produce and operate more sustainably than other countries that would then fill the supply gap? To me it's hard to grasp. And then on the second point, I'm curious, it's funny, at Napish, I was talking to a CFO of an EMP, and he's been, I think, in the industry for 20 plus years. He's been around and seen it all. And he said that they were backed by a private equity company at one point, NCAP, which then now it's family money. And he was making making the comment about sourcing capital is extremely difficult in traditional energy. A lot of the banks obviously are pulling out or getting less exposed due to the risk and volatility and all that. What about and you mentioned a little bit, but like, can you just briefly touch on like how or like the approach of sourcing capital on the energy tech side? Like, is it still look kind of down upon, or is it kind of like different? Like, can you touch on that at all?
Yeah, there's certainly less, if you compare now to say pre-COVID, there's certainly less capital available, not just for oil and gas companies, but I would say energy tech companies as well. I would say that for sure. Investors that don't typically invest in energy tech or hadn't in the past, I would say 5 years ago, they were open to it. I would say probably 50% of them that were once open to it are just like oil and gas related. No, not investing in that. So, like I said, we took the approach of, okay, we have to assume we're never going to get another nickel from anybody. We just need to build a good company.
Yeah.
And if the metrics of our company are positive enough and good enough, like our growth rate looks good and our we're not burning a bunch of cash or whatever, then we will eventually attract capital. But it's the same for energy tech, I think, as it is for the operators. So for the private equity companies clearly have smaller funds. All of the big ones have reloaded recently, and they've reloaded at lower amounts. than their prior funds, even though their prior funds had excellent returns. So if earning the return is not good enough, then you have to kind of move yourself into a model that is sustainable long term. And that may mean you defer investments you'd like to make now. If you could spend a little bit more cash than you're bringing in, you may have to defer those investments. But we learned that lesson just like our customers in the operator space learned that lesson. And then collectively, you know, we're going to come out of this probably all of us better as a result. Like having unlimited capital is not necessarily always a great thing, right?
Right.
When you have to be resourceful, you actually, that's kind of when you are able to come up with breakthroughs. It's like you don't have the option of just throwing money at every problem, right? You have to rely on, well, you know, can't do it the same way our competitors are doing it, but we still need to solve the problem. What are the other things? So having the money may mean you just simply say, oh, we'll just spend the money. You know, we'll just hire a bunch more people. You know, whereas for us, we're like, we can't hire a bunch of people. We've got to figure out a way to automate this and do it with very high quality. How do we do that? And that's harder. It may take a little longer, but ultimately, you actually end up building a better business that way. So I think the same is true in energy tech as it is in the oil and gas space in the summary.
No, I will share that and add to that from like oilfield service perspective. We've come out of every downturn so much stronger with better talent, with better processes, and just better thought out planning and strategy. And so it's unfortunate because there's a lot of jobs that have, gone to the wayside that may have not come back, but kind of going through those tough times ultimately allows you to, be more resilient and see really what you're made of. So like to your point is like getting access to cheap capital, and almost at like an unlimited supply. I think you can get lazy and probably just, again, I'm not a founder of a company like yours, but I could see how being in the environment that you are in the long run will actually make you stronger. I want to pivot a little bit because I was wanting to ask this earlier, but I'm very curious on the origin story of Novi Labs. You were at Hess before that, but can you talk about how, were you scratching your own itch, or was it just an idea that you popped in your head one day? Like, talk a little bit about that.
No, I think, when I worked at Hess, I was on the technology side, and we, at the time, about 40% of the company's capital was going into one asset, an onshore asset in North Dakota. And there was a massive number of things they were doing. A lot of drilling was happening, but also building an entire gas plant from zero, midstream pipelines. I mean, you name it, a lot of stuff going on. So because there was so much capital going into that part of the business, myself and my team, we sort of organized ourselves to like, what can we do to help these guys? Like, how do we help them make better use of the data? So we started doing a lot of dashboards and things like that. And that was all great. They loved that. And then we're like, how can we do more? How can we use machine learning, artificial intelligence? These are sort of emerging things that have found firm footing in lots of other industries, but not in oil and gas. Like, how do we find a way to use that stuff? So really, Novi for me, became the solution to that problem. Because I kind of felt like one oil company, even though they could afford it, probably shouldn't build in-house software. Like it's a massive endeavor, requires a lot of investment. But setting the investment to the side, the most important thing about a software company is you get pushed in a lot of directions by a lot of different clients, and the software ends up representing the best solution for the industry, not just a totally custom solution for one company. Custom solution for one company can very easily end up being an echo chamber. It's like everyone's opinion at that company gets built into the software, but is that the best software you could get? Is that the best solution for forecasting the future production of oil wells? Probably not. So I, after kind of building some, cobbled together solutions internally with some of our business customers supporting the Baca, I said, this needs to be a separate company. And luckily, Hess was like really supportive. They have a long track record of innovation. They have a long track record of, ideas that were born there that then germinated. And I think they kind of have a similar view that software should probably not be something an oil company builds, but rather something that is a commercial solution that oil companies buy and then customize for their needs, you know, similar to SAP. I mean, there are
Yeah.
oil companies that built their own accounting systems 30 years
Mm.
ago. And then
Yeah.
at some point, they're like, well, maybe we should use P2 or SAP or W Energy or one of those things instead, because in the end, it's a lot cheaper and it ends up being a better solution. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we got started.
Huh.
Hess was our first client all those years ago. So they
Okay.
were very supportive. And they could have taken a lot of different views on it, you know,
Yeah.
but ultimately they sort of agreed with our thesis that if we get more companies to use this, it's going to be a better product, you know,
Wow.
for everyone. So that's kind of where we ended up.
Well, a big shout out to Hess, i.e. Chevron, at this point, right? So, but a really interesting story, and again, I think it's cool that Hess obviously supported you in this endeavor, and I'm sure they're looking at it now. It's like, hey, we're glad to be a part of the journey to some degree. Looking at it, kind of fast forwarding to now, how would you say? Like obviously this space is fairly competitive, uh but as you guys I feel like have kind of taken charge, what are you currently doing this year, or sort of some initiatives that's going to be instrumental in the growth and success of Novi Labs as people perhaps try and chase the leader?
Yeah, I think there's really three things we're pedal to the floor on this year. You know, one of them is in our analytics software, helping customers solve the parent-child depletion problem. It's just vital. We came up with an innovation that we put into production about a year ago that provides very good results. The degradations that it forecasts as wells get closer together, or if you offset an existing development with one right next to it, clearly the wells that are closest by, the older wells, are going to be diminished. At least you would expect that they would be. So that problem set of parent-child, prior well depletion, I'm gonna develop the formation above or the formation below. Like, we've worked really hard on that, and we're gonna continue to push the envelope and build better solutions in that space.
Awesome.
The second thing on the data side of our business, we acquired a company called Shell Profile in 2021. That became the genesis of our data product offering. So this is like wellheader production, completions data, spacing, subsurface, etc. So like broadly, I would refer to that as engineering analytics data. So we've added all the data sets that are necessary to feed into any analytical model, not just ours, but any analytical model. And we think we have a very high quality version of that engineering analytics data set that we sell to customers. What we're going to focus on next is what we call advanced insights. So like, how do you take that core high quality engineering analytics data and turn that into something that's actionable? So like, it's one thing to say, well, ABC has X amount of cube production at IP360 and be right. That's important. But now we're going to be focusing this year on rolling out new things that are built off that base, but allow customers to do things like build supply models that include declined PDP wells all the way to EUR, plus Novi's view on future inventory. So we've been working on these things. Ted's been talking about some of this stuff on LinkedIn, some of the outputs that we're seeing, but there's just so many useful things that you can do just by consuming this data set. If you're a financial services company and you want to build a supply model, you have to have some view as to what's going to get drilled in the future, because that's going to affect the supply, right? Same thing for for operators. If you're thinking about doing something a certain way, you might want to model what Endeavor's doing, because they're actually doing a pretty good job just looking at the well results. So what are they doing, and how do I mimic that? And if I put those wells in my acreage, what's the difference?
Yeah.
So trying to help customers answer those questions quickly and provide an out-of-the-box, quote-unquote, Novi answer, but then allowing them to then elaborate on that answer and make it their own using our analytics software. That's a big area of focus for us.
Yes.
And then the third thing which is kind of built on, like, let's put it at the very top of the stack, is using our data, our analytics expertise, these advanced insights data sets, and actually publishing our own points of view. So our own Novi research product. So we hired a new head of research out of Calgary, a guy named Brandon Myers. I've known Brandon for a long time.
Oh, cool.
And he's already published research. We published a view on the Chesapeake Southwestern merger,
Oh, that
the
was him
Callan,
that put that out. Okay.
yeah, the Callan Apache merger. He published something on earthquakes in the Permian. So I mean, we're going to
Yeah.
cover, instead of doing like, hey, you should buy Exxon or sell it or hold it or whatever. So instead of doing those kinds of recommendations, it's going to be more focused on, hey, here's our view on the remaining inventory in the Permian and what's likely to be drilled next and how much production is going to come if it does indeed get drilled that way. So I think there's room in the market for a voice that is purely driven based on the data, and that is the void that we want to fill.
I
Because
love
I
it.
feel like lots of people publish opinions on things and then change their mind 2 years later and never publish a retraction of what they said earlier. I don't know. I'm just tired of that. And I feel like there's a way that this could be done better. And I feel like we're uniquely positioned to offer it. So we're building a new offering in that space that we're really excited
Well,
about.
and one thing that's again, and then you guys have done a good job of taking like what a lot of people, there's a lot of people that are great at analyzing data, but then telling and building a story around that without like super strong opinions or any like major biases that's digestible and people actually enjoy reading. Like there's a limited amount of people who like to read that type of stuff, but if you can get it to a mass audience, because there's a lot of people I'm sure that read your guys's content or the blog or the stuff that that gentleman has been writing that probably vary, whether it's finance folks, engineers, geologists, sales guys trying to figure out what's next. And so like again, I think that is so unique because I try and read a lot of market research and stuff, and some of it is just like ugh, it's a sludge to get through. But I think the messaging and storytelling piece, but driven by data, is again, it's a tough skill to own in on. And so I would, again, as someone that consumes a lot of content and creates, I would certainly double down, which it sounds like you are. I mean, I think that's such a unique piece of it. Is that like and again, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but is that like a future like revenue stream, that kind of stuff? Or are you more focused on like positioning yourselves as the authority, which ultimately leads people, subscribing to your guys's software?
Yeah, it'll be both. I mean, we plan to continue publishing thoughtful things on LinkedIn, but very thorough analysis, individual corporate research, I mean, requires significant investment. So,
Yeah.
we'll make the investment, and we do plan to sell that as a subscription product,
Oh, nice.
in the coming months. So it'll be something that current customers could add on to their subscription. It'd be something that new
Nice.
customers could subscribe to. But I mean, we're building these things because we get asked these questions, like just over and over and over. Oh man, I love your analytics software, but I don't have the engineering talent in-house to build my own models. Even if I could,
Right.
which you certainly can in our software, they also want to consume answers in situations where, let's say a teaser comes across their desk and like, oh, this looks kind of interesting. Let me go see what Novi has to say about this acreage. And then they get an instant answer. And then our thesis is, if you want to elaborate on that, buy our analytics software on top of the research offering and take our research deliverable, load it in, and make it your own.
Yeah.
So the idea of constant improvement and editing and sort of in facilitating internal collaborative discussion about these things, like what we've observed and what customers have told us is, yeah, company data analytics provider A wrote this negative piece about us, and some board member read it, and now we've got this whole spun up unplanned work where we got to defend ourselves. And I've heard this story countless times, and I'm like, what if you didn't have to do that? What if you could read the research and then immediately see the data it was sourced from attached all the way back to the individual well if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
This is the difference between the kind of research product we want to build and the kind of research product that I think exists today, which is just, as I call it, the slam piece. And you get the slam piece, the board member reads it, and then you call the company in and say, why did you write this? Tell me where you got your data from. And then there's like a disagreement about the data. And what is the board going to do with that? Like
Yeah.
nobody agrees. So like nobody can source anything. Nobody can tell me where it came from. That's really what we want to fix. And we think we can fix it. We have the ability to lineage thing, what we say, back to the data. So if you
Wow.
have the capability to do it, why don't you do it? And that's kind of
Yeah.
what we decided we're going to invest in this year.
Man, it's exciting. I'm just fascinated in hearing you speak. And I mean, you've kind of painted the picture, but I mean, what is your long-term vision for Novi Labs? I mean, and how do you see the company shaping, the future of energy analytics essentially?
Yeah, I think uh, for the next year, we have a pretty committed set of things, big projects we're working on, some of which I've described here. But broadly speaking, the technology we've developed, the algorithms we've developed, they don't really care if it's an oil and gas well or a wind farm or whatever. So
Mm,
I feel like we can take our core competency in building high quality data sets and then building models that forecast energy production from those data sets. So as I'm not debating whether energy transition is or should happen. It should, and it is. A lot of investment going into that space, but as it happens and as development occurs, you build a historical data set behind it, and you get this sort of unique view as to what worked and what didn't work. So I feel like we could move along with our customers into that space. I mean, many of our customers are actively investing in energy transition. I mean, the absolute best thing that can happen is oil companies can use their profit from oil and gas. And if there's good government policy in place, they step through the process. They're the best suited people to make the investments and build or lead the energy transition because they already know energy, just like we already know energy.
yeah.
And for us to forecast wind or solar, it's a different set of inputs. But other than that, core competency is the same. So our long-term vision is stay focused on energy, but move more into or further into transition related data sets, transition related forecasting, et cetera, as that becomes a bigger and bigger piece of the energy production mix. I mean, there's one thing that's not up for debate, which is we will need more energy. Population grows, they need more energy. They want light switches that work. Like you flip it, it turns the light on, right? They want to have heat in their houses when it's cold.
Yeah.
So all of those things are absolutely true. We are going to need more of this generally as a society.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
biggest way to reduce poverty is to make energy more widely available.
I
It's
know.
the most
Yeah.
important thing, So
Yeah.
as this continues to happen, as the mix evolves from mostly oil and gas to say other things creeping in, we feel like we can take a leadership position uh, and just the focus of our company will continue to be high quality data sets leading to uh, a very as accurate a view as possible as to what kind of energy production might be possible in the future and make that energy production as capital efficient as possible.
Yeah. No, it's again, there's such like there's definitely you can't debate that the demand for energy is going to continue to increase, right? And it's just, I mean, we might get more energy efficient here in the US, but globally speaking, I mean, look at how many parts of the world still don't have access to electricity. Again, I mean, the global oil demand, that's another topic in discussion. But to your point, I mean, you, there's no short of or really there's just going to be required more and more folks like yourself coming up with these solutions. And so I think it's fascinating to kind of like expand your horizons and think, without having just like strictly oil and gas tunnel vision, like understanding that it's all connected. uh I think is good, right? Because it gives you that long-term sort of outlook and vision, which I'm curious, like from your side of the table, what kind of, besides, say, let's just leave capital aside, what is your biggest headwind or challenge for continued growth? What's really kind of anchoring you a little bit?
I think, I mean, uh, not lack of capital availability is a problem not just for us, it's a problem for broadly in the energy industry, right?
Hmm.
So if we had more capital, we would accelerate investments that we're making. It
Sure.
doesn't change the outcome; it just changes how fast we get there. Uh,
Right.
I, as an entrepreneur, right? I'm used to I'm used to just like there's a problem, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm going to solve it somehow. In the case of convincing somebody to give you money so you can grow your company, there's like a lot of things at play there that you can't control and you can't fix.
Yeah.
So we'll play the cards we're given. We will always be aggressive about raising capital so that we can uh, increase our pace and deliver more to our current customers and more to future customers. I mean, we spend a lot of money on R&D. I mean, one of the reasons we got in the data space is I just felt like the typical participants in the data space just weren't investing. I mean, they're mostly owned by very large private equity institutions or very large public companies, and they just stopped investing. And when you stop investing, it has this sort of knock-on effect. So like
Mm.
they stop investing, they raise prices. They stop investing, they're still not investing, they still raise prices because they've got to increase their margins because that's what their financial backers want from them. We're still a little bit smaller and a little bit more agile. So, most of what we make, we spend on R&D, and we're going to keep doing that. So as we grow, we increase our R&D budget as a percentage of revenue, not the other way around.
Sure.
So I feel like our mandate is the same, regardless of whether we raise additional capital or not. If there are good terms available, we're absolutely going to do it. And the reason for raising capital is, I mean, certainly we need to invest in sales and marketing, and so that's obviously got to facilitate increasing your revenue that way. But the other way to increase our revenue is to continue to build the best products available, and eventually being the incumbent provider, the that advantage wears off, and customers are like, God, I wish there was an alternative. We've had customers that have bought from us, even though they know we don't have something that they need right
Really?
now, but we're committed to delivering it, and they believe us. And then
Wow.
we try very hard to make sure we execute on those commitments. So I
Fascinating.
think the industry in general, both on the finance side and on the oil and gas operator side, is sort of rooting for somebody to upset incumbency. And obviously that's a role we relish to play.
Nice. No, that's a great way to wrap that up. I do want to ask a couple questions. I'd like to close out by asking a couple of fun sort of personal questions. So kind of switching gears here, but um, what's an idea? I mean, obviously you are super busy. You're flying here, flying there. You got your family, but how would you describe the ideal Friday night? If you could do anything in the world, assuming you had all the money in the world, what would John do on a Friday night?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can give you an example. Last week I got home. I guess it was Thursday midday or so. So I usually uh, I love sitting down with my wife and talking about like a recap of the week because like so much stuff happens in these meetings that I go to
Yeah.
and customers I talk to, and it's almost not real unless we have a chance to discuss it. And then the other thing, I have twins that are 13 years old.
Oh, nice.
So you know, they have different interests, of course, but um, my son likes to play basketball, and he's in eighth grade, so he's determined to beat me at basketball. So I'm like, all right, every Friday you get your chance.
No way. That is
Yeah, and we don't do it every Friday, but because sometimes the place we go to an indoor gym here, and sometimes they have like soccer or pickleball or other things
yeah.
going on. But if it's open, it's on.
It's
Uh,
game time. Dude,
and
that
I
is
hope
so cool.
he hasn't beat me yet, but he will. Because frankly, I am getting old. My knees are going to give at any time. But until they do, he's going to have his chance. So I
Man,
love doing something fun with the kids. And then usually, there's actually a lot of great places to go out to eat here in Park City. So that's always fun on a Friday. And then the rest of the weekend, we live in, I think, one of the best places in there on earth, and so there's so much to do. It's almost hard to choose. But
I bet.
skiing here is unbelievable. I'm looking out my window; it's snowing right now.
Oh, beautiful.
We have friends from Austin coming in town this weekend. I think we've gotten about 16 inches of snow in the past 3 days, so they're pretty.
I'm gonna plug my
Everyone's very excited.
oh,
Yeah,
dude,
so um, and then
amazing.
actually, the other thing we love doing on Fridays, there's twilight mountain biking over at Deer Valley, which is one of the resorts here. But they converted into like a downhill mountain bike park in the summer.
What?
So Fridays they stay open a little bit later because especially in the summer, like it's light here until 9 o'clock at night. A lot of cases. I mean, you can easily ride until 8:30, and
Hmm.
it's still pretty bright out. So
Wow.
that's another thing we enjoy doing for
That is
sure.
definitely my wife and I have talked about going, getting to Utah. We went to Colorado this around Christmas for a family vacation, but she plays in the real estate investment world, and she's got some folks that she knows that have been up in Utah, and it just sounds like a beautiful spot. And so you're having me salivating about getting up and experiencing all that.
I mean, I wouldn't I wouldn't characterize the resorts here as better than Colorado for skiing or mountain biking. The
Sure.
big difference is you fly into the airport here and you're 30 minutes from this,
See,
right?
that's
Not
attractive.
not 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 3 to 17 hours on I-70.
Yeah.
I lived in Boulder and a while ago, and the traffic was bad then. I can't imagine it's gotten any better.
Yeah.
The tunnel is still 2 lanes wide, so like you
Yeah.
can't make it go any faster unless you drill a new hole.
Man,
Um,
that's so true. Well, is there a
yeah.
direct flight from there to Houston? Do you know?
Oh yeah. Like there's
Really?
Southwest and Salt Lake is a big hub for Delta. So like you can fly
Uh,
anywhere direct. Like our data team, their office is in the Netherlands. So
Oh,
I
wow.
flew direct from Salt Lake to Amsterdam, which is super easy. And
What?
then Southwest also has great service in Salt Lake. So you can pretty much fly to any Texas city direct, except unfortunately Midland. I have to do a connection for that. But outside of that, I can pretty much fly direct anywhere I
No
need to go,
kidding.
which is really nice.
What a cool piece of information. Well, John, this has been an absolute pleasure. I can't thank you enough for joining. What I'll do
Sure.
is I'll put, for those listening, I'm sure they're familiar with Novi Labs, but I'll put the links in the show notes. Connect with John on LinkedIn, and of course, get with Ted. He just continuously pumps out such good, informative content. And again, for everyone out there, let's always make sure that we're approaching the energy landscape with a radically open mind. Be kind, and always remember that everyone deserves access to energy, and we is greater than me. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks, Justin.